Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2022 and a brand new experiment today where we're taking a look at what would happen if you had the perfect manager in the game. Now what we've done this year, which is a little bit different to what we've done in previous years, is instead of taking the best player, which we had in our last experiment, and turning them into the best manager, we've actually gone for a brand new manager in the game who's 26 years old, and most importantly, he already has the Continental Pro license. This is the biggest barrier in the game to being able to get a successful manager, because if they don't have a Continental Pro license, they are very unlikely to get one through the game's natural processes. So starting off with a manager who already has this is a really big way to start. It does mean he already has a little bit of a biography, which we are going to have to just ignore. So all of this stuff up to July 2021, we're going to ignore, except for the fact that he is the manager at Dorking. I have a bit of a soft spot for Dorking. They're my go-to non-league team. So he is going to be their manager, and we're going to see if with this low reputation that he's got, if he can start to climb up the football pyramid with Dorking, hopefully do really well and turn them into a powerhouse. But I imagine as he does well, as his reputation increases, he is likely to be poached by other teams. Now obviously if at any point he remains unemployed for a long period of time, I will intervene and bump up his reputation to make sure he gets a job. Hopefully that won't be the case, but I will let you know as we go. And I'm hoping to go 40 years or so into the future. He's 26 at the moment. It'd be good if we could go all the way forward to his age of retirement. That will take some time, but I'm hoping to keep this experiment to just 2 episodes, so we're really going to absolutely race through whatever career he does end up having. So in that vein, let's go forward 20 years into the future with Jenkaldo Jr. and see how he gets on in the world of management with Dorking and then with any other teams that might come his way. Well, his time at Dorking wasn't the best. Dorking are a team who are supposed to finish up in around 5th place, but as his season went on, you could see there were quite a few defeats. He didn't do too well in the actually he seems to did do quite well in the trophies. I was going to say he didn't do too well, but he has done well. He's got them all the way through to the quarter-final of the FA Trophy, where he did lose. But this really poor end to the season meant that he actually didn't manage to keep his job. And despite winning the last game of the season 3-1, he was sacked at the end of the season. The day after the final game, he lost his job because they ended up finishing all the way down in 12th, which is some way off 5th place. 5th place was 14 points away from where they finished up, so he did not do well in non-league football. He then also didn't do well in getting another job. He stayed as a pretty low reputation manager for nearly 3 years, and at that point, with his first job having been such an overwhelmingly unsuccessful gig, I did bump up his reputation. I didn't move him to a club, I just bumped up the reputation, and pretty quickly after doing that, he moved to his next club, which you might be able to tell here was Manchester United. So he moves to Manchester United, and if we have a look at the senior squad schedule for Manchester United, he took the job with United on the 4th of December 2024, which I think would be this season here. So the 4th of December 2024, where were United by this point? So that's his first game here would have been this 3-1 defeat at home to Newcastle. It looks like they weren't actually doing too bad. I mean, they lost a couple of games, I suppose they lost 4 Premier League games by that point. Champions League wasn't too bad, but they went on a hell of a run straight afterwards. He did really, really well, helping lift them up the table somewhat. They only lost 1 game after that, and it was a Champions League away game at the Bernabeu. Right up until the last month of the season. They also lost the FA Cup final, so close to his first major trophy. They did make it into the Club World Championship, but lost to Manchester City, so that wasn't a great time for him. But the start to the next season got off really, really well, unbeaten in everything except for the Carabao Cup for so long. Look at this. This is a spectacular run. FA Cup knocked out by Leicester, but Champions League, they made it into the semi-finals, but I think they lost on penalties to PSG. That's a really tough way to lose. Look how many penalties were taken, right up to the goalkeepers and then on. That is a lot of penalties. But their Premier League campaign went really, really well here, the 25-26 season. If we have a look at how they did those 2 seasons, so this was his first one. He managed to get them up into the Champions League places, only 1 point off second, so a pretty good turnaround from where he came in. And then the following year, they did end up finishing as champions in the Premier League. So he's won a Premier League title, even though he missed out on that FA Cup. It was a fantastic season, just 1 point in it in the end, which is nice because they beat Chelsea at home to take that title. So a really, really good job there to win a Premier League title in his first full season at the club. The next season, he loses the Community Shield, not great, having great luck in the cup competitions, not doing too well there. But he does have a bit of a mixed start to the Premier League as well. Lost 3 of his first 4, and then in October loses another 2 games with another draw, which means that by the time you get to November, they're really struggling down in mid-table at this point. And on the 20th of November, following this 2-1 defeat to Southampton, despite the fact he'd won 4 in a row before that, he was sacked. A new manager comes in, and a new manager did very, very well, taking them all the way to Champions League victory over Manchester City on penalties. So a very good sacking. If not for Jenkaldo Jr., it was a very good one for Manchester United. But luckily, he was not out of work for long. His next gig was, interestingly, at Leicester City. He took the job here just 1 month later on the 6th of December 2026. So if we go and have a look at that, that would be the 26-27 season. 26th of December. We can see, was this 4-0 win, so 4 straight defeats before he comes in as manager, only 1 win in 6 before that as well, and a lot of defeats earlier in the season. You can see why they needed a new manager. And he comes in and immediately goes on a 5-game winning run in all competitions before struggling himself. They do fail in the Europa Conference League, but they have a good finish to the season. It's not particularly bad at all. The following season, the 27-28 season, he gets a full season with Leicester here, and you can see a little bit of a middling season, a few wins, terrible end to the season, this 27-28 one. And if we just have a look here, obviously the 26-27 season when he came in, he did manage to get them up to 10th. The next year though, he managed to get them up to 6th in the table, still good 12 points off the Champions League places. So I think you could probably call that an improvement, but no success in the cup competitions. And when you get to the 28-29 season, you can see it's not the best start. He does pick up through September, but then as you get on towards the end of the calendar year, he's not doing as well. And then on the 29th of November, despite this little unbeaten run going on here, 2 defeats in a row, including away from home at Newcastle, leads to his sacking. And as you can see, they go on a great Europa League run right the way to the final, but unfortunately lose 1-0 to Spurs. So you could argue that was another good sacking that he has been the victim of. But it's not making for a great record at this point. 3 clubs, including Manchester United in a non-league team, and 3 sackings in 7 years. So he's really, really not on a good run. After being sacked by Leicester, he takes another month or so out of the game, but it doesn't last that long, and he actually ends up moving to Southampton. So he's sort of doing that classic English manager in the Premier League thing of bouncing between different Premier League teams just around the middle area of the league rather than going with one team for a long time or going up the table particularly well. I mean, he's been sacked, so it's not been his choice up to this point. But you can see he joined Southampton on the 10th of January, so they were actually on a good run before he joined. They'd run 6 in a row before he became the manager. And they continue that good work, getting through in the quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup. They beat Liverpool over 2 legs, a massive win, 3-2. Luis Suarez, I assume not the Luis Suarez, getting 2 goals to sink Liverpool. And then in the Carabao Cup final, they beat Newcastle United as he wins his first ever piece of silverware. Because he won the Premier League. His first proper piece of silverware with a team that isn't Manchester United. He wins the Carabao Cup 4-1. I think that's got to be very meaningful for him, winning a Carabao Cup with a sort of mid-table team. And he does reasonably well in the Premier League in this season, the 28-29 season. If we have a look at how Southampton do there, they finish up in 6th place. So a trophy and a 6th place finish with Southampton is quite a result. The next year, the 29-30 season, they start off reasonably well again, doing well in the Europa Conference League, a lot of wins in the Premier League as well. They're not doing too badly there. They're sort of up towards the European places, but they do go on a poor run of form here against some big teams in December. And then when you get into January, he has a fantastic month where he wins every single game. And then in February, another couple of wins, so that's 7 in a row before losing to Arsenal. And then randomly, despite their success in the league and how high up in the table they are, he leaves. He leaves the team that he's won a trophy with, that he's leading into good European contention. And who does he leave them for? Is it Man City? Is it Arsenal? Is it Man United again? No, he leaves for Brentford. Now this one makes no sense to me. I've had a look at where they were in the table. Brentford were below Southampton in the table. They'd finished below Southampton season after season. And yet in the 30-31 season, in February, he moves there. I mean, look, they've been on this terrible run of form as well. Inconsistent all season. A great start, but inconsistent all season. Not in European competition either. I do not understand why he left for Brentford. It was such a strange move. And he doesn't even do that well with them at the end of that season. So if we have a look at where they finish up, Southampton, you can see, finished in 7th place, and they dropped in form as well. They were 4 points off the Champions League places, and when he left, they dropped in form. And so he missed out on Champions League football to take the Brentford job, who were in 15th place at the end of the season. He couldn't do anything to save them. He wasn't far off getting relegated with them. It did not make any sense whatsoever to leave Southampton. I don't understand what happened in his mind to make that leap, but he did leave. He went to Brentford, and it just didn't pan out the way he seemed to imagine it would. The next season at Brentford, he starts off quite well. They get a good few wins under their belt, and then you get the classic kind of middle form heading into the winter, and by November, on the 8th of November, he does get sacked. So this is not long after he loses to Arsenal. Oh no, that a bit further on. So they lose 5-0 to United at home. They get beaten 3-1 by Man City away. I mean, that's a tough start to the season. He did well right off the bat, but they just fall apart here. And suddenly he's sacked after this game against City. A 3-1 defeat at the Etihad. Not a big surprise after being smashed 5-0 by United at home. But he gets sacked after the City game, loses his job, and must have been at home crying, wondering what went wrong and why on earth did he leave Southampton for Brentford. So Brentford didn't do too well either season he was involved in them, obviously finishing 15th one season. I mean, the next year they actually pick up to 8th place, so that's not too bad. Another good sacking of this manager, despite the fact they lost all these games. That doesn't seem right. 31-32, are we looking at the right season here? Oh no, we need to go to the next one. Yeah, we're a season behind, so maybe actually he didn't do too bad leaving Southampton. He took Southampton to 7th place, not far off the Champions League places the season that they won the Carabao Cup. The next season, actually, there we go, they finished down to 10th. But even then, that's not a big difference. He was above Brentford when he left for Brentford from Southampton. And then the next season, Brentford do finish down in 16th place. Southampton finish up in 7th. It was just a terrible, terrible mistake, which ultimately cost him dearly, because he was actually out of a job for 2 more years. Nearly 2 full years he was out without a job. He couldn't get a job in England, and the place that he moves to is Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga. So he's not getting the big jobs at this point. If we have a look at how Hoffenheim did, he joined them on the 7th of August 2033. So that's the 33-34 season. I don't know why they had a vacancy on the 20th of August, but they did have a match that day. 2033, that's the right time. And you can see he doesn't do too badly with them. Hoffenheim at this point, a bit of a middle of the table team, a lot of defeats. He survives a long, poor stretch of form. I mean, look at that. That's 1 win in 3 full months, 2 wins in 4 months. So Hoffenheim doing pretty poorly, but they do turn it around right at the end. The next year, much better results across the board. They make it to the semi-final of the German Cup as well in the 34-35 season. And then in the 35-36 season, he's got them into the Conference League. They're doing pretty well in all competitions. And when you get down to that winter period, something goes through his head in the winter, and he never does that well. But this time, surprisingly, he decides to leave them after this game. He leaves them on the 25th of December. On Christmas Day, he decides to leave Hoffenheim. So, hang on, 25th of December 2036. Oh no, we've got another season in him. There we go, not that year. So he's doing quite well actually at this point still. And then you can see the Europa Conference League, he gets beaten by Spurs in the semi-finals. Not a great result there. Not as good a start to the season, but when you get down to that December point here, he's just won a game, and this is where he hands in his notice. They're not in Europe at this point anymore. He just hands in his resignation, and he decides to leave Hoffenheim. He had a pretty good time with them. So he came in during the 33-34 season, left in the 36-37 season. So let's have a look at where they finished. The 33-34 season was his first, and you can see Hoffenheim finishing in 8th place. The next season they finish in 7th. The year after that in 8th place. And then the 36-37 season when he leaves, they do finish again in 9th place. So they were holding their ground, never really going up, never really going down, but generally not doing too bad a role. Now the place that he decides to leave for, again, it wasn't a massive move, but he goes to Atalanta in Italy. So moving into his 3rd different country at this point. He joins them. Joins Atalanta on Christmas Day, after having left Hoffenheim in 2036. So if we go to that 36-37 season, Christmas Day, he joins Atalanta, and they immediately go on this excellent winning run in Serie A. Then they do start to struggle just a little bit, but all in all, not too bad. They're in the Champions League knockout stages. You can see beaten by Leipzig, but they do quite well everywhere else. Don't quite make the Italian Cup final either. The next season, the 37-38 season, his first proper full-time season in Italy. They're in the Europa League at this point. Very good run in Serie A as well. Losing the Italian Cup semi-final first leg. And in the return, but managed to get through in the Europa League through to the semi-finals where they beat Borussia Mönchengladbach, and in the final they lose on penalties to Spurs. So a little bit of a disappointing finish in that one. Despite the Europa League final appearance, he actually gets sacked after that game. Not long after that game, but a month after that game, he gets sacked quite randomly at the end of the season. That is a bit of an odd one, given that he'd done reasonably well and got them to the Europa League final. It's quite hard to keep track of these notes because he's he's going through so many clubs so quickly, so many sackings, so many teams that he leaves. But the 37-38 season in Serie A, his first season, the 36-37 one, you can see Atlanta finished up in 6th place. The year before that, they had finished in 4th, so he's not done well. They were a Champions League team before that. Obviously, he'd come in after a sacking, but the following year, they finished in 6th place again. Maybe they wanted Champions League football and he didn't deliver it, but ultimately, it did cost him his job at the end of the season. So not great that he managed to get himself sacked at that point. But it didn't take him long to get another job, and it was quite a good job as well. He got himself a position in Madrid. Apparently I can't spell Atletico Madrid. It's because it's Atletico. Or maybe it's not. A Madrid. That's what they call it in the game, because I assume they do not have the rights. But he ends up getting a job at Atletico Madrid, which is pretty good. Right off the start in the summer, in the 38-39 season. They're in the Champions League. They do make it into the group stage, unbeaten for a little while, before losing to Bilbao. And then they get into October. And then randomly, at the end of October, when they lose to Getafe here. Now, bearing in mind, they've drawn 5 league games. They've not won that many, and they have now lost a couple of games. He randomly gets sacked. It feels early to get sacked for an away defeat, and their team actually do very well after that in the league, starting to recover. But that's just like 3 months he's in that job and then gets sacked again. He really isn't doing well. Of the teams he's had at this point, he's been sacked, I think, 6 times and left 2 successful jobs. Well, Hoffenheim was a bit of a middling job, but he left that job. I mean, it's really, really just not gone well for him. And I think he can realise that after this point, because he does decide to take a little bit of time out of the game by choice or because nobody will hire him. He's unemployed for about 9 months after losing the Atletico Madrid job. And after that, he goes to the relatively safe space of Porto in Portugal, his 4th separate country at this point. He joins them in the 39-40 season. The league isn't even loaded in the game, so you can't even see what he really gets up to, but he does get beaten by Liverpool in the Champions Cup. If we have a look at the Portuguese Premier League season, the 39-40 season, he does win the league with Porto. That's nice to see. He's won another league title. We can add that to the Premier League and to the Carabao Cup that he's won. He's got another piece of silverware there, which is nice to see. He also did win the Portuguese Super Cup that season, so he did the double that time around, which is a good bit of success for him. And then he does decide to leave the Porto job at the end of his first full season. He's not there for very long. But the place that he moves on will have to remain a little bit of a secret for now, because I think we'll need to call it a break there. I mean, you can see in this 20-year career so far, he's gone from Dorking, where he was sacked, to Man United, where he was sacked, to Leicester. Although he did win a Premier League title at Man United, he was still sacked. He was sacked by Leicester. And then he had a really successful time with Southampton before leaving that post for Brentford for some reason, where he was sacked. He went to Hoffenheim, where he had 3 good seasons there, to be fair. It's the longest place that he has been a manager, was Hoffenheim. And he did a reasonable job just holding their ground near the top half of the table before he went to Atlanta, where he was sacked. And then 4 months at Atletico Madrid before being sacked as well, and then Porto, where he decided to leave Porto and move on after 1 full season. So he didn't do too well, I would say, in the first half of his career. A lot of learning probably in all of that to set him up for the second half of his career. But what we will do in the next episode is go another 20 years into the future. We'll see if he can have a slightly more successful time of it. Hopefully hang on to a job for more than a season would be nice. Hopefully get some more trophies in the bag. But I will tell you that his next job that he gave up the Porto job for is a strange one. It's not necessarily the kind of team you would expect, and I haven't messed with his reputation at all since giving him the Man United job, so this is definitely a very, very strange choice. But please drop a like on the video if you did enjoy this one. I apologise for trying to keep track of this guy's career is crazy. I've got extensive notes in front of me, and even then I still couldn't get it exactly right. This has been a tricky one, so do drop a like down below if you've enjoyed his career so far. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see the second part of this experiment when it comes out, probably tomorrow. But until next time, see ya.